Hi, Democrats. Today is Tuesday, September 21st, and it's time for the Chair's Daily Live. Happy Tuesday. So today I'm just going to jump right in and talk about redistricting. I'm sure you've heard a lot of talk about redistricting. It feels like one of those inside baseball kinds of things. And so I want to break it down because it directly affects us here in Oklahoma. It directly affects us. So let me give you kind of the high level one-on-one. So every 10 years, we do the census. You guys heard me fussing about the census this time last year. And this is why. Every 10 years, we do the census, and the census is a count, and it is how we divide up the state to make sure that we're equally represented. So in Oklahoma, we have five Congress people, and they each have approximately the same amount of constituents. And the map is all janky and scheduled. It's not like they just took the state and divided it into rectangles, which kind of makes sense in my brain. But what they've done is, in our state and in most states, the affiliation that is in the majority. And so in our state, it's Republicans. The Republicans are in the majority, and they get to draw the maps. They get to decide. They get to pick the voters. They get to go in and say, we're going to move some of these voters over here and some of these voters over here. And they draw the maps to benefit their side. They draw the maps to make sure that, so in Oklahoma, the majority party is Republican. So they draw the maps to try and make sure that more Republicans get elected. So if there's a concentration of Democrats in a group, they try and break that neighborhood up so that Democrats don't get a benefit. And that contributed why Oklahoma is such a Republican state, because they were in power in 2010 when it was time to redraw the maps. And they were very careful and deliberate, and they redrew the maps, and they took over the legislature, and they drew the line so that they could keep the legislature. It's not hopeless. We still have work to do, and we still can find pockets, but that's part of how we got here. And a lot of people ask, how did we get here? That's part of how we got here. Now, fast forward 10 years later to now. So the census data, was messed with last year by our then president, who kept trying to announce shortening the time. He didn't spend the money on advertising it, so that not as many people filled out the census as possible. But Oklahoma did have a shift in demographics. And I'm sorry, I'm going into all of this, but I do want you to know it's really important. So we had a shift in demographics. But we had to draw the maps because the maps are due this year. So we drew the maps, and our legislators vote on the maps. They say, yeah, these maps make sense to me. Everything's fine. And they have to vote on it in the next session. So they did vote on it before session was over last May. And then in August, the final numbers came out because they voted on it using estimates. The final numbers came out, and about 2/3 of the map were wrong because the estimates were messed up. And the way it's divided is each representative in the state house has the same amount of constituents. Each representative in the state Senate has the same amount of constituents, and the same way with Congress, right? That they have the same amount of constituents. And so if a bunch of people moved into Tulsa, which is what happened, a bunch of people moved into Tulsa, and they left a lot of our rural communities. So the rural communities, the representatives that represent the rural communities have to pick up some people, and the people who live in Tulsa have to lose some people. It changes a lot of that. So 2/3 of our districts have to be completely rewritten. And so they've announced that they're going to have a special legislative session so they can vote on the new maps. All of that sounds kosher, except the new census data came out on August 12th. It is September 21st, and they haven't announced a new date for the special session. They said they're going to have one, but they haven't announced the date. They said it'll be in October or November. That's a 60-day swing, and they haven't announced the date. If you decide to run, every day I come on here and I beg you to run for office. If you decide to run right now, you don't know what district you live in, unless you live next door to your legislator or your backyard neighbor, because our current legislators were not drawn out of their district. But if you live a couple of miles away or a couple of blocks away, you could have been part of the part that had to be taken out, part of the part that had to be shifted. So if you want to run, you don't know if you can run. And then our state has residency requirements that says you have to live in your district for so long before you can run. So you can't just like, today is filing day and you can move into that neighborhood tomorrow and run. You have to live in the district for a certain amount of time, depending on the office you're running for a certain amount of time before you can run. The further we delay approving the lines, the further we delay challengers to our current incumbents. And let me go back to, we are a largely Republican state, which means that most of our seats are held by Republicans. Let's say you're a Democrat, because you're watching me, right? You're a Democrat and you think you want to run. You don't know. I live in 78. I'm pretty sure I'm going to stay in 78. But what if I wanted to run in 78 and I did all of my stuff and I did all of my research to run against the incumbent? I wouldn't, because she's a Democrat and I like her. But let's say that that's what I was going to do. Well, I can't research my opponent because maybe I don't live in 78 anymore. Maybe I live in 79, or maybe I live in 77. I don't know. You don't know, because the lines have to be redrawn. So here's the upshot of what I'm saying. This is another example of a lack of transparency in our state legislature. Full stop. They are hiding from us, and they are delaying things, and they are stacking the deck against the general public. They are picking who they represent rather than letting us vote and decide who we want to represent us. They are picking who they want to represent. That's not how it's supposed to work. We talk about voter representation and the importance of access to the ballot box, but I got to tell you, this is them rigging the system before we even go to the ballot box. They are deciding, and I mean the majority party, because they're the ones who are drawing the lines. They are deciding who you get to vote for. Not who works the hardest, not who does their research, not who starts the earliest, because they're rigging it where you can't start. They are picking who represents you. They are deciding who they represent. They are doing all the deciding and leaving us just the crumbs to decide. The voters should be the ones who are picking. And so I ask, who are they hiding from, and who does it benefit? They're hiding from us, and it benefits the majority party. And then the next question is, well, what can we do? And who do we need to talk to? And how do we change this? Our governor can decide to call special session. The pro tem of the Senate can decide to call a special session. The speaker can decide to call a special session. That's who is responsible for calling a special session. And I'm going to surprise and shock you guys. They're all Republicans. They're all Republicans. It is working for them. So they are not in a hurry to change the system. So this is the point where I give you a different call to action other than just running for office and helping a candidate, because I'm always going to say run for office and help a candidate. But I have a different call of action for you today. Call your legislator. I don't care if they're a Democrat or a Republican. Call your legislator and ask them to demand a date for special session and demand that we see the maps. We need to know who our representatives are. We need to know who we get to vote for or have to vote for. We need to know, and we deserve to know. So, call to action. I need you to call your state reps. You can go out to state rep. I'm hoping that he'll put this up for you guys. You can go out to the House of Representatives for the state, put in your zip code, find your person, send them an email asking them, or you can call Governor Stitt. That's easier. Call him, send him an email asking him to set a date for special session. It's high time we know who we get to vote for. It's high time that there is some accountability. Okay, so, I come here because I want to provide information, because I think the more you know, the better you can make your decisions. And so sometimes it's a little in the weeds, but I think we need to know. Thank you, Joanne. I think we need to know that they are pulling some funny business right now. They are pulling funny business. They are hiding. They are not being transparent, and they are delaying the process, trying to keep control of everything, which also kind of makes me think they get it, that we are working and we might have a shot if they just level the playing field just a little bit. So that's all the more reason that I need you to decide to run and support a candidate, because they're running scared. They're pulling out all the stops, pulling out all the truths. And we have to work. We have work to do. All righty. The next opportunity for an election is October 12th. It's not all over the state. So go out to the state election board, put in your name, your birthday, find out if you have an election, research it if you do, request your absentee ballot, and cast your vote. All righty. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for indulging me. And I'll be here tomorrow at 4:15. Have a great one.